Warning. This episode contains spoilers for Grim Fandango, Starcom Nexus, Tales of Iron, Fable Anniversary, Lacuna, and Divinity Original Sin 2. Please watch at your own discretion and enjoy.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Bite Marks. And if you're joining us in this wonderful fresh 2022, then that can only mean one thing. That's right, we're doing the Bite Marks Best of 2021. We're starting this year off by looking back at the previous year. I'm Emilio, pronouns he, him, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Callum.
Hi, I'm Callum, pronouns he, him. This is take 2 of a re-recording because we lost a lot of the audio for the first time we did this, which is why it's happening in January. But we might continue doing it in January. It makes more sense.
Yeah, I think actually it makes sense to do the retrospective because there's always a chance that you could play something on New Year's Eve that could just change your entire perspective.
Well, maybe I go to parties on New Year's Eve, but yeah, we could play something in December, and if we do this, we used to do this top 3 video fairly late into December anyway, but it just makes more sense to give us the extra time to play through a game.
Yeah, plus I've not been, I for me, it's weird in the sense that my top list is one game on the list. I played it at the beginning of the year, and then one game I played kind of at the middle, and then one game I played it literally a week or two before we were going to record. So I feel like shifting it into the next year is just probably the better idea.
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember when I played any of these games.
We are also changing the rules a little bit. Instead of doing our top 5 games, we're just doing a top 3. Firstly, I haven't played as many games, so a lot of my top 5s, that would be kind of stretching it. But also, I think it makes it easier for us to meet our stream goals of actually streaming all of these games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we can talk a little bit more about each of the games and why we like them. And yeah, I think a top 3. Callum, do you have any honorable mentions?
I suppose I have one.
Okay, so let's start off the top list with your honorable mentions, because I've got nothing.
Okay, my honorable mention for this year is, and this is going to be weird, and I'm not sure, this is why I don't think we should start this off with them, but it's Tales of Iron. Which is a game I started playing because of the recording we did that we lost. Because it's Emilio's second top game.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because we're not going to be really rehashing that earlier conversation, but I've had a lot more time to think about things. So it is really funny to me that your honorable mention is a game that was on my top list because you just started playing it when I mentioned it, and
yeah,
that is gold.
Well, that's why it's
comedy gold.
That's why it's in my honorable mentions, because I've self-imposed the rule that I can't put a game in my top games until I've at least finished most of it,
Okay, so we will talk about that, actually. It's quite rare that you and I will have had a game on the list that we both played. Usually we play very different games.
Yeah, but I also didn't want to... I'm not going to talk much more about the game itself, because you're going to talk about it, and then we can discuss it then. But yeah, that's my honorable mention. And also, just a quick heads up, another change we're doing this year is that we're doing themes.
Oh yeah, that's right. Callum, would you like to tell them about the theme for 2021?
The theme for 2021, the year in which none of us could leave our homes, is of course adventure.
Yes, exactly. While we're all confined because of an ongoing pandemic, hopefully it's not going to be over by the time you listen to this. But,
yeah.
Hopefully it is soon.
Apocalypse year 3, baby!
It is, 2021 was the year of the adventure game. And we don't just mean it's a point-and-click adventure game. No, we mean, broadly speaking, that the game has to be about an adventure.
Of some kind.
And, that can be loosely interpreted, or that can be very strictly interpreted, as long as the game is about an adventure. Now, obviously, you could argue that every game is about an adventure, And I would say, yes, Tetris is about an adventure of the mind into insanity as you try to stack blocks. But I think an adventure typically has more of a linear story and follows a single character or maybe a couple characters as they, do some heroic stuff.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so with that in
the
mind,
stipulation is that it has to be about an adventure of some kind, and it generally has to have a linear story.
yeah, I think RPGs are like for
RPGs are
me,
adventure games, but modern.
yeah, RPGs are the modern version of the adventure game. So none of the games that I have on this list are RPGs, but they all do involve adventure, I think, and to some extent role playing. So yeah, let's kick this off with I think my top game of 2021.
Your third top game.
Yeah, my third top game.
Don't jump the gun, sir.
All right. Enter a scene. A man smoking a cigar or cigarette.
Jesus, I thought we weren't doing this the second time.
You thought wrong, bucko. He's smoking a cigarette overlooking a neon-lit city. Cyber cars flying through the air. His mind tormented by visions of his past failures and terrifying anxieties about the future. He is Joseph Conrad, and he is a cyber detective.
He is the Blade Runner.
Oh man, I wish. So, my third best game of 2021 is Lacuna, a science fiction adventure game, which is literally what it says on the tin. It is probably the most traditional adventure game on this list, but I would argue that it breaks a lot of the conventions, because number one, it's controlled with basically WASD. There's no mouse at all, and I love that. Lacuna is a game about a character, a guy by the name of Conrad. I think his name is Joseph Conrad, and he's a cyber detective. He works for a base version of, I guess, the FBI, and his life is just kind of a mess. He's going through a very messy divorce. He doesn't spend nearly enough time. As per usual, yeah, he doesn't spend nearly enough time, bonding with his adorably precocious child. And he's caught a hot case.
Adorably precocious.
His kid is very precocious. I'm just like, oh my goodness, my heart melts for this poor little girl whose father is kind of a douchebag. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But he catches this hot case where a very important extraplanetary minister from another planet is murdered at night, and you rush to the crime scene to figure out what's going on, and then you get embroiled in a kind of conspiracy theory. Well, not a kind of conspiracy. It is a conspiracy. But you get embroiled in this conspiracy. Now, I don't want to spoil the story of Lacuna. I really do think you should play it for yourself, because I think it is the kind of story that is worth experiencing. I do want to talk, however, about the mechanics, because I mentioned that this is a traditional but also not traditional adventure game. So, firstly, as I mentioned, there are no mouse controls. You control everything basically with the WASD keys or a controller. And that is a huge departure from adventure games, because firstly, Conrad plays like a character who's moving through a world, right? There's no platforming or quick time events really, but you do interact in the world in a very different way. I've never really felt lost playing Lacuna. In a lot of adventure games, I will play them, they have lots of environments, lots of details, but it's very easy to feel lost. But Lacuna is very well designed in the sense that you move from scene to scene in your story, but you don't really feel like you're lost. The environments are very self-contained, but varied, and you, generally speaking, will only have a couple of things to interact with at a given moment. And the game will let you know very clearly, here are the things that you should interact with. It's not really a pixel hunt, which I very much enjoy. But the primary thing, I think, that makes Lacuna stand out is that it gives you homework.
Oh, that thing that games are meant to be distracting you from.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do badly, the game will punish you.
So I do just want to bring something up. I did a quick Google for it. Joseph Conrad is the Polish-British writer that wrote Heart of Darkness. So
I'm. His name is Conrad.
But do you think it's a reference?
It could be, because Lacuna does have a lot of references in it to other fiction properties. There are some references there that, if you're a fan of science fiction, you'd probably be like, oh yeah, I know what that's about. So I don't know if I feel like maybe he's called Conrad just because, number one, that's a cool name, but maybe it could be a reference. I'm not sure. But mechanically, this game is very interesting. So you get homework. So because Conrad is a detective, he has to actually solve crimes. So what happens is you have this sort of sheet that gets sent to you that's like, hey, your boss is like, you have to solve this crime. Who did it? Why did they do it? Details, right? And these fact sheets change from case to case because you have many different cases that you have to solve. And it forces you to actually think about like, hey, what are the things that I know? Why do I know them? And sometimes if you choose wrong, like the big thing about Lacuna and the real reason why I think you should play it is that the developers spent a lot of time making sure that the choices that you make in the game have consequences. And that's really important, right? There are lots of ways that the story will branch and shift and change in both significant and insignificant ways just by how you choose to behave. Like, you can play, for example, a Conrad who is incredibly abrasive, incredibly mean, terrible guy, but he gets results. He's like the loose cannon on the edge, but he gets results. No one likes him. His marriage is a shamble. His relationship with his child is, off a cliff. Or you can play Conrad as a sympathetic, nice person who doesn't get all the results. In fact, there are some significant consequences for not getting all the results. But nevertheless, manages to rekindle his relationship with his wife. Spoiler alert. But the thing is,
I don't feel you can say spoiler alert after you say the spoiler.
Okay. Well,
retroactive spoiler alert. Superman dies in the end.
Yeah, he does. Unfortunately, you can't save him. But yeah, what makes this game good is that it feels like all the choices are meaningful. Like, no matter what choice you end up making, you can make an argument for why that choice was the good choice, and why Conrad as a character would have, made it. And it really felt like a science fiction adventure. I really felt like I was watching a well-produced science fiction show or maybe a movie. And I genuinely enjoyed the story. I enjoyed it enough that I played it like 3 times. And that's not something that I generally do with adventure games. The point-and-click types. Because usually, it's kind of a step to go through the whole game. But because everything is facilitated via storytelling and via making decisions, rather than, inventory puzzles, it always felt like I was experiencing a different story each time. And I played this game 3 times, and I really genuinely enjoyed where the story twisted and turned. And I actually solved one puzzle on the third playthrough that I did not solve in the other 2 playthroughs because I was looking at it from a very different perspective, and suddenly it just clicked.
I have to say, as a just like a player of games, this game sounds wonderful. But as a reviewer of games, this game sounds like hell.
Why is that, Callum?
Because when I review games, especially for websites, usually I have a week as a deadline.
Oh.
Not even, about 5 days. Because we need the 2 extra days to, make sure there are no problems, or if a sudden update comes out, you have to check it out or whatever. And playing through a game with multiple endings that require you going through the whole story again in a week is hell. That is hell on earth.
All right, counter argument. I think you could play all. I think you could get all the endings in Lacuna in a day. It's a very short game.
Oh, okay. So then that's another selling point for you folks out there. It's not a super long game, so you don't have to dedicate a ton of time to it.
So what I like about developers, and what I think more developers should do, is they should focus on making a short experience that's packed with a lot of stuff, right?
Short stories.
So, yeah, exactly. Look, I love short stories, and I feel like Lacuna is for the most part actually a short story. It's not really a full-length novel because it'll take you like 1 or 2 hours. Like on my first playthrough, it was like a 6-hour game, right? And that's because I didn't know what to do, and I spent a lot of time thinking about everything. But once I had the gist of what the game was about, my next playthrough only took me 2 hours. And the final playthrough, skipping most of the dialogue because I didn't want to read a lot of it, I could finish the game in like an hour. Because it's a relatively short experience, but there's so much of it and so much variety that you get a full play experience by playing it multiple times. If Lacuna was longer, I feel like that would work against it. But because it's short enough and there's enough meaningful choice, you can actually do, quite a lot, I think.
It's the
And
polar opposite of like Ubisoft's design
Oh
philosophy,
yeah,
where it's
Ubisoft are.
big.
It's like I would use food as a metaphor. So Lacuna is basically a very nice, very filling sandwich, and it's like finger food, right? It's really tasty, and you could eat like a bunch of these. But if you had a few, you would be kind of satisfied, and you could move, on with your day, and it's fine. But Ubisoft, they have like some nice ingredients, but they make like a gigantic buffet, and the food is not really good, and it feels like a slog to get through.
Or it would be
And
like
the-
if you ordered a small but well-made pizza,
yeah.
perfectly balanced and everything, and then Ubisoft brings out an enormous pizza with tons of toppings and stuff, but it's just there's no feasible way for me to enjoy this entire thing.
Yeah, and also, the more you play of it, the more samey the pizza feels. Whereas the small pizza
Yeah.
is like every bite can be something different,
Yeah, and then you're gonna have to like put most of it in the fridge and stuff. And this is where the analogy breaks down somewhat, but it's gonna be greasy and weird, and you're gonna have nightmares, and your stomach's not gonna like you.
Yeah, and people on the internet are going to complain one of the pizzas is gay.
That you can't. I was taking a sip of tea. You can't launch jokes like that at me.
All right. Well, I feel like I can't talk more about Lacuna without spoiling it. So, everyone, when we originally did the video, there was, I think, a sale. Now it isn't. So get Lacuna on sale and have fun with that one.
And even if it's
All right,
not on
Callum.
sale, it's not that expensive.
There will be a link. All of the games that we're talking about will be linked in the description.
Yeah.
So you can check them out. Yeah. So Callum, your next game, please.
Well, you know what interested me about your discussion of Lacuna, Emilio, is that you kept
Yes.
talking about how your choices mattered.
Yes.
And you know what a game where choices also matter?
Oh, what is that?
Fable.
Fable.
Specifically Fable Anniversary.
You know what the funny thing is? We had this conversation before, but for some reason I still couldn't picture Fable when you. my mind was entering like a fugue state. Probably brought about by the effects of Peter Molyneux. But yeah, genuinely Fable.
Okay,
So yes,
no, you know what? I
tell
get
me
it.
about it.
Look, I've said this so many times on the show, and it's the reason why Fable's never going to be higher than my third place. I'm doing this because of nostalgia. Okay?
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
2021 was tough. And sometimes it's nice to go back to, some old games that were really with you.
Yeah, you want a comfort blanket, that you can wear and just
Yeah.
feel good about it.
I do love a good blanket, but
Blanket.
but here's the interesting thing is that Fable 2 is my favorite Fable of the series. Purely
mine
out
as
of
well.
nostalgia. It was like the first game I ever had on Xbox. It was so fun and weird. And I loved it. But I want to talk about Fable Anniversary.
Yeah, sure.
Because Fable Anniversary has two things that I think puts it out above Fable 2 design-wise for me.
Yeah. And what's that?
One, there's far more variety in the magic.
Okay.
And it's a shame that in Fable 1, a lot of the magic goes to waste, because you end up only ever using like 3 or 4 spells at most. But there is a huge variety in it, and I do feel that with a bit of like tweaking and fine-tuning, that variety could have been brought back in later Fable games as, something more useful. But you know what, they kind of did that, so it's not a big thing. This is like a small thing for me. I like having lots of variety in my magic spells that do a lot more utility things instead of just damage.
Yeah, Fable 1 is in this weird place because developmentally, just talking about the Anniversary Edition, but developmentally, there wasn't still a single idea of what a magic system would look like in a video game.
Yeah.
And so, because it wants to be its own thing, it's going to come up with its own magic system. Nowadays, the magic systems that get created are all very similar to one another. You can blame Skyrim for that.
Well, the Elder Scrolls series in general, I guess.
Yeah, that could be a whole episode, just like the shadow cast by the Elder Scrolls. But That would be a cool title for a book.
The Shadow of the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
A three-part novella series.
Yeah.
But the second thing I want to talk about is something I hate about the later Fable games that isn't present in the first one. Is the idea of hero blood.
Yeah. The heroic lineages.
Yeah. So in Fable 2 especially, it's okay in Fable 2, I think, because there are multiple heroes. So the idea being that, like, the guild was sealed and we need people of a specific bloodline to open it. It's like, it's not new, it's not interesting, but it's okay. It's done pretty okayly, and you have to find all of the other heroes in the first half of the game.
Also, correct me if I'm not mistaken, but I feel like a big part of Fable 2 was that even if you could find the person with the heroic bloodline, you still had to, like, convince them to be a hero.
Yeah.
Like, Hammer, the hero of strength, she's like a monk in a pacifist community, so you have to convince her to become like a warrior again, you know?
Well,
So,
what's interesting about her is that she wants to become a warrior and help you, but her father wants her
yes.
to stay a pacifist. It's only until the peaceful community is attacked that she, like, takes up the mantle and decides, regardless of anything, I have to help people.
Yeah. And a lot of the heroes, I think,
Like a Reaver. Reaver, who's basically evil.
Yeah, so that's kind of morally complicated. I feel like in the third Fable, they kind of did that away, because now the only heroes are the monarchs.
Exactly. Only the
And-
attractive white rich people are heroes.
Yeah, that was, you know, because in Fable 2 you had Garth, who was from East, he was from Samarkand, I think.
I
He was
don't know
black.
I don't know the inner, like, continents of Fable, but yeah, he was a black dude.
And Hammer was a woman, and Reaver is a douche. So, you know.
Oh, you know,
everyone's represented.
the three genders, woman, man, and cunt.
Yeah, so a question I have for you.
Yes.
A question I have for you is, do you think the Fable games are, like, because in my mind, the Fable games aren't really, I don't think of them as RPGs, necessarily.
I would call
I think of them as,
action adventure.
yes, I was going to ask, like, what do you think makes Fable an action adventure and not an RPG?
I think it's that it's so oriented around your play style, right? It's so because with RPGs, I think you select a play style. The general key to it is that you invest in things in like your upgrades and whatever that help you foster a play style for later. But Fable kind of takes whatever playstyle you naturally use and then just gives you experience for that.
Yeah, I like God of War is not an RPG because you can get more you can, like, get the red orbs, at least the earlier ones. You can get the red orbs and get, like, more damage. It's an action adventure game. You get more powerful, but it's because of how you're playing.
Yeah.
I feel like Fable is an action adventure in mechanically, because obviously it will change your playstyle. It will allow you to get better at doing your playstyle. Not necessarily that you choose a playstyle and then get better at doing it. You play the way that you want to play and you just get better. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
but also I think it's a... Oh, sorry. No?
Well, like, for instance, there's no point in picking... The only point in picking certain armors is generally for the alignment bonus, and then you just pick the one that's, like, the strongest.
Yeah, exactly. And for a story kind of perspective, even though it is about, like, heroes and stuff like that, there's something about the Fable games that has always struck me as, like, pretty strange. Like, there's always a disconnection in the writing, you know? Like in Fable 2, sorry to keep going back to Fable 2, but like in Fable 2, you can have this moment in the Spire where it's like, oh, we've toiled away, you know, thousands of people have died, and then you can use the Spire to, like, resurrect your dog. There's this
Well, okay,
way that
let's give the full context. You're resurrecting your whole family. Your dog just happens to be a part of that. And he takes a bullet for you. He's the good boy.
I can see which choice that you made.
No, I made the I made all three choices because Fable 2 takes like 5 hours to beat.
Yeah, that's true. But it's just the way that they tell the story, right? I don't really feel like I'm playing myself as a character. I feel like I'm just following a guy who's doing this stuff and watching him do it, and I'm just playing it, to make it do it. But I never really felt like I was a character on my own. I always felt like I was someone else controlling a character who was having an adventure, if that makes any sense.
I do get what you're saying. It's difficult to be immersed, but it may just be me specifically, like that I'm generally better at suspending my disbelief. That I can feel immersed, because I did often feel, not in the story sections, I'll give you that. Mostly in the like side quests and stuff is when I felt like, oh hey, I did this.
Yeah.
Not whoever the hell I'm controlling did this. It was me, Callum.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe that's because my experiences are mostly with Fable 2 and Fable 3.
Well, I
like the aesthetic more. Fable 1 is a little bit medieval for my tastes.
No, I get you, but just for instance, I promise I'm going to talk about Fable 1 in a minute. I will. But in Fable 2,
it's our show. We can talk about what we want.
Yeah, there's a quest in Fable 2 where you have to go into like a painted world.
Mm.
And you have to fight there are certain enemies that can only be defeated with like magic and they glow blue, and the ones that can only be defeated by like guns and they glow yellow and whatever. And I love that because it felt very like D&D sort of side adventure.
Oh yeah.
And it was so cool. And I remember that I love the aesthetic of painted worlds anyway. There's a moment in The Witcher Heart and Stone DLC where you go into a painted world, and it's awesome. It always is. But it does feel like a definite like side adventure. This is something that I did in my life of questing.
Yeah, I suppose the main hero story. So,
yeah, which is why I need to say two things about Fable, the series.
Yes.
Leaning back into Fable 1. My favorite thing about Fable 1 in general is that the Heroes Guild is just a guild. It doesn't take specific people. It doesn't take people of a certain bloodline or whatever. It is operating, as far as I can see in the game, as just you can go there and train to be a hero or a villain. And I think in the next Fable game, which they're apparently working on, they need to bring that in.
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, they're bringing out a new one apparently. They need to bring back the Heroes Guild. It's just a guild now. You're just a hero for hire. Second thing, make it more RPG-ish. Let me make a character. Don't give me a character with a story. Make the story vague, like I'm trying to be the best hero in the world or something. And then just let me make a character, because the most fun in Fable isn't beating the story. The most fun in Fable is that almost Monster Hunter, Witcher sort of on-the-job feeling.
Yeah. All right. So one of the arguments that I would say that Fable is not an RPG is because you don't really make a character in the traditional sense. There is a character that you just choose. I actually think that you would be on the money there. I feel like there is a lot of potential, especially in Fable 2, where there was like, oh, you have to do like jobs to get money. That's like how you got there were like mini games and stuff. Like, I feel like if they leaned a little bit more into the whole idea of like, oh yeah, you're just a guy, you're like a temp basically, and you go around doing like temp jobs, and in the beginning, your character's like doing basic stuff, and I don't know, like low level hunting quests. That's like office, low level office work. But then as you work yourself up, you can really like emphasize the role playing aspect of being like a jobs body, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, make being a hero a job, like it was in the first game, because that was great. It was so perfectly set up for what we're talking about, because there was a renown system where you like boast with a trophy, or you go onto the podium and you say, I'm gonna beat this quest without wearing armor, or I'm not gonna use any magic on this quest, and then you got more rewards if you fulfilled that.
That does definitely sound like a good direction. But whether or not they will go in that direction, I think that's a question that has to be seen.
I don't know, because Lionhead Studios closed a while ago, so now the people who are making the new Fable game are the people who made Forza. Isn't that wild?
Oh boy. Wow.
Kart racing! If this ends up being Fable Kart, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I kind of miss the days when like random video game series would just get like a cart spin-off.
Not
yeah,
random. It would always have to be
my...
a mascot one, like a Bandicoot, like Crash Bandicoot or Spyro. Sonic, yeah. Sonic got so many racing games, which is so dumb. His whole thing is being quick.
Yeah, he doesn't need a car. He's just...
Nor does he need a surfboard. Like a futuristic hoverboard. Stop, Sega.
Yeah, but, you know, before we get too far down on a tangent, last point about Fable. Why should someone play this game? Why should they play the Anniversary Edition in 2022? Because it's quite an old game.
Well, besides the fact that it gives you all of the updates and everything, gives you all of the DLC, I think there is something special about Fable. It's the kind of game where you watch your character gradually become bigger and taller and stronger and more magical. And I think that body morphing, I can see why people don't want to do it, because especially if you make a character, you want them to look sort of the same way. But I do think it's an interesting progression system, and I think it's something you're not going to see very often nowadays. So go and play it, because if anything, just to remember what gaming was like a while ago. Not necessarily better, but different.
Fable is a time capsule into a time when gaming was very different. Yeah. And I think that, that is definitely... I know there are lots of people who carry water for the Fable series. I feel like, you know, there are definitely some interesting things. Like, it's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily good. It's just different. And I feel like that's perspective that you need.
It's got a lot of weak points that stop it from being a really great game. But, like, it's a decent game that's going to keep you busy for a while. And I think just go and try it, because it's also one of the few games that I do want to save the world in. Mm-hmm. Because while it's not the same way as like Zelda, where I get charmed by the characters. It's more like, I do kind of like this world. In general, just how it is. I like the fact that there are talking doors that want you to do random shit for them so they can give you treasure. I like that there's, you know, a hall of heroes and an arena, and that everyone's kind of an idiot. I love that. I want to save this world.
It's a very funny version, I think, of like an interpretation of... Because Fable is very British.
Oh, very British.
So it's a very funny interpretation of like a fantasy... It's almost like if it was a little bit more goofy, you could see this being like a Monty Python video game. You know? And that's a good enough reason to play it as any. So now we get to my second game, which you've actually played.
Hey, what's your second game, Emilio? Do you think I've heard of it?
Yeah. It's Rat Dark Souls.
Rat Souls.
Rat Souls. You know, I tried making a game once. I called it Mouse Maze Dungeons. And you were a little mouse with a sword, and you had to go through procedurally generated dungeons. Now, this was done in ASCII art, because I was much younger, and I feel like Tales of Iron...
If you beat the game, did you get to rename it?
No.
That would have been the best prize.
Yeah, you just go like around corridors and fight monsters and eat cheese to get health. And anyway. So that was like Rat Dark Souls before Dark Souls existed. But Tales of Iron is a fantastic game, right? It is gorgeous visually. In terms of the audio design, which is an underappreciated thing. It's really nice to listen to. Sometimes when I was playing the game, I would just stop in the middle of the arenas or whatever and just listen to the music. Obviously, it has very good narration. The narrator is actually The Witcher.
Yeah, the guy who does the voice for the Geralt of Rivia in all the games.
Doug Cockle is the narrator of this rat Dark Souls game.
And it's like, I can't fully describe to you how wild it is to see like this cute aesthetic. Even though it gets like violent at times, it's still pretty cute. And then to just hear Geralt of Rivia going, "And then he would taste my blood," or something, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, you know, he'd be like, you'd just be walking around like, "Lord Tiddlywinks was hoarding cheese. As king, I had to deliver justice."
What was that?
You're like, what?
God, there was an amazing frog, one of the blocking frogs. I'll remember the name in a second. Keep talking.
Yeah, so Tales of Iron is the story of Reggie. Reggie is the son of the king, who is a mouse king who lives in a little castle. And one day, Reggie and his brother Dennis, real regal names, are trying to compete
because it's
to
the name
become...
of my dog and my uncle.
Yeah. And they're trying to compete to become king. So because this is medieval times, there is a tournament, and you and your brother fight, and you beat your brother because you have to, otherwise you can't progress in the game. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a spear flies off screen, viciously murders your dad. A giant toad shows up, and the frogs and toads just start showing up and just killing everyone. And you get knocked out, and when you wake up, the kingdom has kind of fallen into ruin. The toads have invaded, taken over everything. The realm is scattered and divided. And yeah, no jokes, even though this game has a very cutesy aesthetic, you will just see frogs just brutally murdering rats.
Yeah, and you'll see rats brutally murdering frogs.
Yeah,
it is a visceral experience.
It's very violent in a lot of ways, right?
But then again, it's not devoid of charm. Because, like I was telling you earlier, there's that frog's name, which is Blocky Magoo.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Tales of Iron is it is both a serious game and also a funny game. Because there are genuine moments of humor, and then immediately afterwards the game will gut punch you. Yeah. Like for example, when you... again, spoiler alert. You will find a secret society of mole people.
Oh, God.
They're a socialist society of mole. It's like a USSR. They live in a metro tunnel. They have like subways and guns, and you're just like a medieval rat who lives in a castle. And you find them, and it's just like, wait a minute, what? You guys have electricity? You have cars? And then you form a relationship with this mole person, and then he'll just get brutally murdered. And it's like, no,
oh no, don't tell me that.
I gave you a spoiler alert, Callum.
But I have to listen to this show. But yeah, it's a... You know why you should buy it? Because it's so just beautiful as an experience. The aesthetic is, like I said, charming and wonderful, and yet somehow cool. Like, when you lose the kingdom and everything, you lose all of your gear. So you just start picking up gear around the place, and I eventually amassed a light armor set because I'm a light armor boy. I amassed one that looked like basically a jersey, some pants, and a beanie. And
you were the hipster king.
Well, like I looked at that and I was just like, my good rat boy, my rat son, with his sword and his shield and his beanie. I would die to protect Reggie. He is the best.
I love Reggie because he's very unassuming in a way, you know, because he's very naive. And he clearly gets bullied, but he doesn't let it get him down. Like at the beginning of the game, they'll be like, oh, the narrator will just drop a casual line like, oh yeah, Reggie's not used to eating like all regular food because his brothers eat all the food from him. It's like, oh, yeah. My son.
No,
my precious
boy. Eat as much as you want, my boy.
Yeah, it's funny because like you actually eat to gain more health. So the game's health system is basically Dark Souls, where you drink a yellow bug juice and you regain health. But if you want to get more health, you have to find ingredients in the world and take them to your brother, who is a chef, who will make a dish for you, and then you'll eat it and you'll magically gain more health somehow.
Which is
like a bug burger, like grub fries.
Two things. One, that's a very Monster Hunter thing to like eat health to get to eat food to get more health. And two, isn't it so wild that Dennis and Reggie and the chef are all brothers, but the chef was never in the running for the crown?
Well, Reggie's brother is also the blacksmith. So...
What?
There's like... Yeah. Well, rats have a lot of kids. Rats have
that's fair, but I suppose it's just like Dennis and Reggie were the only ones who wanted to.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like surprisingly progressive, you know, because they just make the chef fight.
A medieval society, that's huge. To let essentially a crowned prince work in the kitchens.
Yeah,
That's
well,
enormous.
You know, it is. It's even more. You know, because one of his brothers is the blacksmith,
Yeah.
and that's like they're the king. They shouldn't. Well, not the king. They're princes. But you know, then again, it seems like Reggie kind of has to like do all the work of the society anyway. So it's kind of like one of those situations where you're the king, but like every bumpkin and their uncle has like a job for you to do, and you just gotta
Yeah.
go help people.
But
Something that
it's-
I oh no, go.
Sorry,
Go on.
it's just such a. You have to play this game because if you love things like Hollow Knight, but it's a bit too melancholy for you, and you love things like Dark Souls, but again, it's just a bit too like, well, dark. It's because that's my problem usually with like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls. Is I love them, I love playing them, but they get me down.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to. I kind of can't continue after a while. I have to take a break because the world is just so crushingly, and it's a testament to how well they're designed that I feel this way. But it feels so like crushingly hopeless. But then you play Tales of Iron, and I want to keep going because I do I just genuinely love the world.
I
want
played
to
this
save
game,
it.
I finished this game in basically two sittings. That's how much fun I had playing it. It was genuinely, you know, enjoyable, and I wanted to see where the story would take, you know, its next twists and turns. You probably could guess this about me, but I went for a heavy armor build.
What weapons did you use?
So I primarily used, and this is going to get a lot of flack, but I primarily used the katana.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm the one here who watches anime and you're the weeb.
The katana is great because it does a lot of damage, but it's also very quick. And I loved using two-handed weapons, so I would wear heavy armor and fight with two-handed weapons, and that was like my ideal build.
I'm weirdly similar. I wear light armor and then fight with two-handed weapons.
Well, I guess you know yours is like a glass cannon. You know, you do a lot of damage, but you can't take a lot. I'm more of like
I'm just good at dodging.
So Tales of Iron has a combat system that's kind of in depth. You have light attacks that you can dodge, heavy attacks that you can't. You have to like dodge roll away. You can't just like evade them. And then there are certain attacks that you can't dodge, but you have to
Parry.
You have to parry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to parry. And if you get the timing right, then you can do a lot of extra damage. In fact, you kind of have to parry some of the bosses that are like basically impossible to defeat otherwise without doing it. But yeah, it is a very fun combat system. It's not terribly in depth.
Oh, I do like that it does get deeper though.
Yeah,
like when you get the two-handed weapons, and one of their functions is they can break blockades
shields
and also shields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a kind of combat system where it's not necessarily as in depth as something like Dark Souls, but it has enough variety, especially with weapons. There's so many weapons in the game, and they all have different stats. And yeah, sure, you will gravitate towards the best versions of each kind, but there are enough of the different types. Like spears play very differently to swords, which play very differently to axes, at least to some extent. You know,
I've gravitated towards swords for my regular weapon because axes are fun. Like, don't get me wrong, but I just like the aesthetic of swords more. And that's something. Sorry?
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, that's something I like about this game, is that it doesn't punish you for picking the weapon that you just like the look of more. It's not like...
Yeah, you can...
Sorry.
Yeah, it's not like an RPG system, necessarily. If you want to play with the worst weapon that you just think looks cool, you can totally just get by on skill.
Yeah.
There are better versions of all of the weapons, but, you know, for the most part, like, it doesn't really matter. As long as you get the rhythm of the enemies, you'll get through them, you know?
And you know what? If you... Okay, look. Here's how you know if you want to buy this game. If I say rat in a spiky trench coat fighting bugs in sewers with a sword made out of bug skin, and that doesn't immediately make you want to buy it, it's not for you.
You know the funny thing about the heavy armor?
What?
I had a suit of heavy armor that was made from the hide of a bug. and that was my preferred kit, and that was like very Monster Hunter to run that, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of this game does remind me of Monster Hunter. I kind of want a Monster Hunter where you're like a little rat knight fighting like regular sized animals.
Yeah, well, you have to you have to play as the Palico.
Oh yeah, that would be
the best.
Or the Radico, I guess.
No, Palico. Just make it cats. Cats are cool.
I don't know. I have a certain affinity for rats.
Yeah, rats are great, but cats are cool. And speaking of cool,
yes,
I think we're at like 44 minutes. We should jump into my second game.
Yes.
It's Grim Fandango.
It's Grim Fandango. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Grim Fandango. Whoa.
Oh my god. No, I just couldn't think of like a funny segue opening or whatever. I just don't. Yeah, I don't know how much there is to say. I can say about Grim Fandango. It's so hard to talk about it without spoiling the story, and the story is everything.
Okay, look, Grim Fandango is a game. Here's the pitch: you are a skeleton who is in an underworld.
Okay, no, wait, no, you're being too vague. You are a travel agent named Manny, who is in the Aztec afterlife, trying to help a woman get to like the good afterlife. How the Aztec afterlife works is that if you were a good person in your life, you get to go basically directly to heaven, or like Aztec heaven. But if you weren't good, you have to walk for 4 years across a dangerous land to get to the point where you can enter heaven. And then after that point, you've essentially atoned for your sins. But Manny is a travel agent. He finds basically travel packages for people to go on based on how good they were or how bad they were in life. And this woman is like the first person he's met in a while who qualifies for the express package. Mm-hmm. And then she has to start walking. And he's like, what? But no, she qualified for the express package, and he discovers a conspiracy. And the entire game is about him getting to the bottom of the conspiracy while attempting to find this woman so that he can help her get to the afterlife safely. It is a beautiful experience. It's so well written. It's very funny. But it's at second because point-and-click adventure games can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, it's from a very old era. I think it's the oldest game on this list. The graphics are a mix of 2D and 3D. So you might not necessarily be into the graphical style. That's definitely a thing that could turn you off.
It does look a bit like a folded paper.
Yeah, it has a very strange aesthetic. It's very unique, I will give it that.
I like it a lot. It's interesting to see people give like so much difference to how skeletons look. Like every skeleton looks unique, and that's so interesting to see. Because skeletons are the one thing that don't look unique.
Yeah. Grim Fandango is not the game for everyone. However, if what we've described sounds like a thing that you would be interested in, I highly recommend that you go check it out. I don't think that if being a travel agent in an underworld is not something that just like makes your brain go, wait a minute, that sounds cool. I think you should check it out.
It's from Tim Schafer, which
so
he was the guy before he left LucasArts. Well, after he left LucasArts, he made Psychonauts.
A lot of Schaferisms.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of Psychonauts, you're going to be a fan of this. It's very different gameplay, but it's that same situation of like crazy things happening in a mundane setting. In the same way that Psychonauts is a summer camp for psychics, Grim Fandango is essentially a travel agency for the dead. And
that's that's the best description I could think of.
And we're going to move on now, but just take into account the very fact that we could only speak so little about this is because that is how good the story is. I don't want to spoil a single part of it for you. So if you're in for a good story and you don't mind working with a walkthrough, because you're going to need one, if you don't mind doing that, check it out. It's great.
Yeah. And now we're here to my top game of 2021. So, Callum, last year I played a game called Crying Suns, and that was my top game. It was a story of despair, hopelessness, adventure, drama, war, tragedy in space.
Yeah, we got retweeted on Twitter by the developers.
Woo! developers of Crying Suns, if you'd like to be on, we'd love to have you. But so this year, I have bucked absolutely no trends, and my favorite game of the year is Starcom Nexus, a game of tragedy, despair, war, adventure in space.
But with a key difference.
Yes, this game it's got arcade combat. It's not a strategy game.
It's
really.
not a terrible poo-poo turn-based whatever. It's a cool flying through the air with spaceships thing.
Yeah, instead of being, dorky McDorkson, spending time thinking about what you're doing, you just put the pedal to the metal and set all your phases to destroy and just shoot through the galaxy.
What's your favorite name for space captains again? Chad Thunder Chad?
Yeah.
Yeah,
you kind of are.
You are Chad Thunder Chad, because you don't everyone else is like, nah, politics, nah, space colonies. You're just like, haha, flying spaceships.
You're I'm cutting my communications and powering on my weapons.
I'm turning on the force.
So yeah, Starcom Nexus, despite the fact that it has a very sciencey, fiction-y kind of name, is a game about you being a captain of a spaceship. You start the game in command of a shuttle, and you're literally just delivering some pottery to a space station. You're just doing a milk run, right? But before the plot can, go any further, a wormhole opens up and drags you and the space station into another galaxy. I don't want to spoil the story because I genuinely think that the story is a relevant part of playing and enjoying the game. Because one of the reasons why Starcom Nexus is an adventure game to me is that you have to be uncovering this mystery. The adventure of the story is exploring the galaxy for yourself, and there's an actual spiral galaxy that you can explore. You can go to every single star system in this galaxy, and figuring out the mystery for yourself, so I don't want to spoil it. And you get to genuinely make a lot of interesting decisions. You have a research tree. The game has the system where if you do stuff that develops the science of the space station, or have novel experiences, you will get science points, and you can spend those points on upgrading, developing new weapons and shields and things like that.
Kind of Fable-esque.
Yeah, kind of Fable-esque.
Haha,
so
we feel the ripples of the giants.
So actually, in a way, it really is like Fable, because you can build your ship from modules, right? You can design your own ship in the way that you want to. So if you have a particular playstyle, right? You can reinforce that playstyle by just getting better at it. If you really like fighting with lasers, you can build a ship that's all lasers. If you like missiles, you can build a ship that's all missiles.
Yeah. I do want to interrupt you here, because yes. I know that if I let you keep going for too long, you're going to get too into this and accidentally spoil the game. But do you think that mysteries like Starcom Nexus are the best storytelling? A method like that, having a mystery is integral to a good story?
I'm going to bite this bullet and say yes. I think that out of all of the stories that I've genuinely enjoyed, I think the mystery story is the best vehicle for telling something that is going to engage the audience, right? Now, my reason for this is, I'm going to say it, video games are an interactive medium, Callum. The one thing that we've always said on the show is that video games are a special kind of storytelling, right? They're not like movies and books, which are very passive. So when you have a book, right, you have to have something, you have to have some hook to keep the reader engaged, right? And mysteries, I think, are the best version of that, because the reader wants to know how it ends, right? That's one of the reasons why you keep reading. With video games, you have the opportunity to take a step further and involve the player in unraveling the mystery. So they aren't just merely watching it happen, they are doing it for themselves. And for me, that is the best kind of vehicle for delivering a story, because I feel like, A, I'm engaged, I want to know what happens, but B, I also feel like I have a role in making that thing happen, because you can unfold the story in the way that you want to do it. Starcom Nexus doesn't have multiple endings, I don't really think. There's one quote-unquote bad ending and one quote-unquote good ending, but not really, right?
Yeah, I get you, but the thing, I disagree with you.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because even though I don't like horror, I think horror is the best genre for video games.
Well, horror is probably the only genre that works better in video games than it does in anything else. But what is
Yeah.
at the core of every horror story? It's the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's a
well,
mystery.
I suppose you know what, you got me there. You do got me there.
Woo!
But I think it's atmosphere. I think that's the key defining thing about video games that can make mysteries feel more real and more
So-
like solid and part of you, is that it creates this atmosphere that you have to solve this.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I feel like Starcom Nexus does actually deliver a lot on atmospheric storytelling, right? You will land on planets and like do a little text adventure, but a lot of the galaxy is very strange. Like I will admit, I don't want to spoil anything, but like a lot of the times I would go to a planet and have my expectations kind of unmet or subverted in a way, and it just kept me wondering like what the heck is going on, you know?
Yeah.
And I wanted to know more. The atmosphere really sold it. There are some issues with the game. I feel like some of the puzzles are very obtuse. Like, you know, you need to look up a walkthrough, I think, to really get them. And some of the gameplay, like the end game, I think is really easy for me at least. Maybe I'm just Thunder Chad in terms of being a space pilot, but like I really felt like the end game was maybe a little bit too easy.
Yeah.
The beginning of the game is very hard because you're a tiny little ship and you have no guns and everyone has, you know, weapons and you have to run away. But the end of the game is too easy. However, it is very engaging. You know, one of the things that you might like is you have the ability to make notes.
I hate
This is
that.
this is how you know it's an Emilio game where you
Yeah.
have the ability to make notes.
If a game comes with paperwork, it was designed for my boy here.
Yeah, you have a star chart, but you can just like open it and make notes about the planets that you visit and what you found. And like this is why it's a mystery, right? Because you were like, oh, I found this weird alien superstructure and I couldn't make sense of it. And then you know, make a note like, hey, superstructure, all of these categories. And then you go into another planet, it's like, wait a minute, I found a thing that could maybe go back. And then you go and it's like, oh, it does. And the game, like, I feel like the game genuinely does reward those sort of intuitive, you know, leaps that you can make. Very few times would I play the game and have it basically throw that in my face. But yeah, so Starcom Nexus, definitely my favorite game. It was also made by one guy or two guys. So
that's
I have
always the best thing. Like, I have such a soft place in my heart for like solo developers or like really
the
small
auteurs.
companies. Like Undertale was made by Toby Fox.
Yeah, you get a game when a video game is produced by just a singular person. The kind of vision that you have is very often unique.
Yeah,
You know,
there was an extra punctuation video. I don't want to tell the story without mentioning that because people are going to be shouting plagiarism. But
one day we have to get Yaltzi on.
yeah, one day. There's when he retires, we'll bother him. There was an extra punctuation video where we were talking about how there's a part in Undertale where you can buy a room at the hotel. You can like rent out a room, and if you do, you're just under the blanket, moving as like a little bulge in the blanket, and then you leave. And he says if this was a company of more than just like a few people, Toby Fox would have had to explain why this was necessary. And
Oh yeah,
it never would. There would be no explanation, and that's what makes Undertale special. And what makes these smaller design games special is that you have unchallenged auteur ideas, and a lot of the time that works out poorly. Sometimes you do need to be challenged occasionally, but sometimes it just like makes something so weird and unique and cool.
It's a double-edged sword. And you can cut, and the thing about a double-edged sword is you can cut yourself as much as, you know, you can cut the enemy.
Yes, which is weird, because it's not... Unless you mean it's double-edged in that the one edge goes backwards.
Yeah,
Like
it's a dodgeball situation.
Yeah, it's a double-edged lightsaber.
Yeah, it's a double-edged lightsaber. That should be the saying. Anyway. So yeah, Starcom Nexus. Check it out. It's very cheap. I had a lot of fun playing it. Hopefully, from what I understand, the developer is working on a sequel, and from what I can gather, it might be more story based, which is really fun. So look out for that, guys.
Okay, and such is us arriving to the pinnacle of the video.
Yes.
To the point that we might call of Divinity, because it's about Divinity Original Sin 2, which is my top game of 2021.
I feel, it's funny how we're like, oh, we're, the theme of this is adventure games, and then it's like, okay, Grim Fandango, point and click adventure game, Divinity Original Sin 2, old school RPG,
I wouldn't. I mean, it's old school styled, I guess, but it's not that old.
Well, yeah, it's old school style, but it's not like.
Anyway,
you're not playing like a BioWare RPG, but anyway, yeah.
Anyway, it's made by Larian Studios, who are the guys who are making, the folks who are making the new Baldur's Gate 3,
which should be very good.
Yeah, the early access has come out. I don't know if it's like it's still getting updated and stuff with like new classes and things, but I'm not going to give you too much about Divinity Original Sin 2. You're a sorcerer, which means that you tap into like the source magic of the universe to do extra superpower. The source force of the universe, which lets you do extra super cool, powerful spells. But it also summons demons. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
What I am going to tell you about is 2 moments.
Okay.
That solidified Divinity as my favorite game. Because my story with Divinity is that I used to go in again and again and again. And I loved it. It was great. I love the fact that there were like elemental tiles, so magic always felt like you were interacting with the world rather than just clicking on someone and watching particle effects happen. It did feel like I was setting things on fire if I used fire magic, or I was making oil patches if I used earth or whatever.
Very, very interactive. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, and it was great, but I always had trouble with the fact that I couldn't change my class. I did find out later that in Act 2 you can change your class, and you can change your whole party's classes if you want, so you don't have to keep going back. So I kept restarting, because I didn't know that. And I got very familiar with the first 2 hours of the game, so I didn't want to play anymore. But here are the 2 moments that solidified Divinity as my favorite game of the year. 1, there is a moment in Act 2 where you are on top of these like floating islands almost. Because it's part of a world that got attacked by the Voidwoken, which are those source demons I told you about. And it got like exploded and then stuck in midair.
Okay, so it's like a floating island situation.
Yeah, it's not exactly like I said, but it's kind of the case. Like, it's just weird. But the worst part about it is that you get this poisoned rain that's coming down on you all the time, which afflicts you with the atrophy effect, which means that healing potions hurt you.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And
that is a genuinely brilliant mechanical twist.
Yeah, which means you can't heal at all if you're in there.
That must be frustrating.
However, you do eventually find... the purpose of going in there is to find a source master, a teacher, one of like 8 that you can find in this act. And you go and talk to her, and regardless of where you are in your training, she'll tell you, hey, we're trying to kill this demon. Because if we don't, this demon is going to kill us, and then we can't do whatever. And then you're like, oh, okay, and then you go and fight it. The demon fight is hard, because it's strong. You don't generally fight demons this early on. It is a tough fight, but as soon as you kill it, the atrophy rain stops.
Okay.
And suddenly you can heal yourself again.
Ah, okay. So it was causing the atrophy rain.
Yeah, it's suddenly the world is easier to live in and brighter and less dangerous because you did something. You did something totally optional. You don't have to help this lady at all. This is not like the main quest. But because you did something, you not only made an area easy for you to play in, to traverse in as a player, but genuinely improved it both visually and mechanically. That is good game design. That is showing me that my actions have a distinct change on the world.
Oh yeah, that's like the kind of feedback that you really want to give to a player, because if you don't give it to them in that kind of way, they're just like, oh, well, why do I want to do these things? The actions are not really that consequential.
Yeah, and I didn't even get much from it. I didn't get like a huge reward from it or anything, but that moment in and of itself was game changing for me. The other one is that you have this character called Sir Orcus, who follows your party. He is a squirrel knight on the back of a skeletal cat. And you can't speak to him unless you've got the speak with animals perk.
That could just quickly. That could have been an enemy in Tales of Iron.
It could have. I was expecting it, but so you get this thing in Divinity where you can talk to animals as a perk, and they can give you quests or help you out on quests, or they're just cute and awesome. But if you do, you can talk to Sir Orcus, who tells you that he is trying to prevent an apocalypse as well. And he's trying to fight these this order of people who are trying to bring about the Great Acorn, which will cover the world in forests.
Ah, that's awesome.
And
that is a Tales of Iron villain.
Yeah. And he's trying to stop them. But he's using you as a shield. Because you're big enough to scare them away. And
that's adorable.
At one point, I was doing a fight at an oil rig, which everyone will know the fight. Everyone who's played Divinity 2, you'll know the fight. The oil rig fight is huge and cinematic and a pain, and it's also awesome. But I was doing that fight, and Sir Orcus died.
No.
Yeah, it broke me. And I didn't have a save that wasn't too far back. So
I can feel that.
However,
yeah.
At this point in the game, you gain the ability to do spirit vision, which lets you see ghosts.
Oh no!
So I tried
where
it,
this is going.
and I saw Sir Orcus's ghost. And I talked to him, and I expected him to be like, "How could you let me die?" But he just did his normal talk. And I tried something. I went away from his body for a while, and I used spirit vision again. And Sir Orcus's ghost was still following me.
Oh, that's amazing.
I had a ghost squirrel on top of a ghost skeleton cat riding with me on my quest to become a god. It was amazing.
All right. Guys, nothing more needs to be said. You need to play the original Sin 2.
It's such a... Also, you can be a skeleton, and healing potions hurt you, but poison heals you.
God, this is such fun. This reminds me of the early days of RPGs, like back in the days where it's like, oh yeah, you could cast heal on an undead and hurt them.
Yeah, it's great. It's so wonderful and whimsical, and I love it. My main problems with it is it's also kind of one of those stories where humans are always the racists, and I don't necessarily really want to save the world. I love my companions, but I don't want to necessarily help anyone really. There's no one that's super charming in this world. Occasionally there are Sir Orcus and whatever, but not everyone is. A lot of the time they're kind of gloom and doom, or they don't even know what's happening, and it's okay, why am I doing this? But the other thing I had a problem with is that you have a choice of 3 companions out of 6. So if you make your own character, you can pick 3 of them to be as your companions, or you can play as one of the pre-made characters, which is one of those 6. But there are 3 good choices, and then 3 shit choices. Oh no, 4 good choices and 3 shit choices. But for me, it was 3 shit choices, because one of them is Murder Elf, and she's cute and kind of cool, but her whole thing is I want to get revenge on the people who enslaved me. And it's fuck, I get you, but you're kind of a downer. I don't want to go on a road trip with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No sad elves on the road trip.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's between you and cheerful singing lady with a demon in her head, and or it's between you and Lizard Prince, who talks like a Shakespearean character.
Ooh,
and
okay.
Or it's between you and Skeleton Man, who doesn't understand how the modern world works, because he's trying to look for his lost civilization. And, like, come on. The other two is a boring human and a dwarf pirate, and I was kind of into dwarf pirate, but he's just like, eh.
Okay, yeah, I see the issue with that one.
But yeah, besides all that, and besides, like, you know, how some things can feel underpowered, and because it's an RPG, not everything is balanced and whatever, it is a very fun game. It does take a while. It took me 80 plus hours to beat it, but I might just be stupid, and I was doing a lot of the side stuff. But it's a very fun game to play. I would heartily suggest it. And if you want to play it with friends, you can. There's multiplayer. You can all party up, and one of you can even, like, DM it, so you can design a level, and the players have to go through it.
That's pretty cool. It sounds like a great game. It sounds like I definitely understand why. Like, you know, in a kind of a way, you and I are very predictable. My best game is probably going to be some strange sci-fi story in space, you know, cosmic horror themes, etc. And your favorite game is going to be something that's got a lot of storytelling potential, a lot of wacky characters.
Yeah, I'm a very wacky character person. Scully was the big one last year, but this one, it has a story that can both be wacky and stupid, and also very interesting and reflective. But it's also one of those, like, one of the big things about 2020 and 2021 is my friend group got really into D&D. Because it's something easily that you can do over voice chat. You don't have to be in the same room for it. And D&D...
Speaking of, you guys should, if you're listening to this video, you should check out Hardly Heroic.
Yeah, it's our role-playing podcast. Shill, plug.
Yeah, subscribe to the channel, and also, you know, check us out. We're on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Season 1, out now.
Yeah, but yeah, it was something that we got into as a friend group because it was just easy to do. It killed a few hours and it was fun. And whenever I wanted to play D&D, but I knew my friends' schedules weren't up to it, Divinity fulfilled that itch for me.
That's very high praise, I gotta admit.
Yeah, so you know what? If you're looking to play D&D or some other kind of role-playing game, but you just can't do it, don't have the time, don't have friends, don't have the schedule or whatever, pick up Divinity, give it a shot. I promise you're going to get distracted for a while. It's great.
All right. And with that, I think that closes off our best of...
Yes.
2021. We're looking forward to 2022. We'll see what it has in store.
Follow us on Twitter if you want the names of all of these games. Again, we're going to tweet them out. The links to the games are in the description. Thank you so much for watching and joining us at Bytemarks for another year. It's been crazy to see all the support and everything. Go and check out Hardly Heroic. Like we said, it's a big deal that we've been trying to do for a while, and we're so glad with how it's turning out. And yeah, have a safe year.
Yeah, bye everyone. Take care.
So long.